It's time to predict the SEC this year. Who's winning this thing? Who are the sleeper teams? Who's our conference champ? What's the conference championship matchup? Well, courtesy of Ryan McGrady, got a little McGrady pop stat for you. The SEC has won the last 4 national championships. Not a surprise. If you remove the Bama-Georgia game where they literally played each other, the SEC has outscored the opposition 157-56 over the other 3 games. They've won 6 of the last 9. Nice. They've won 13 of the last 17. So, before you accuse me of SEC bias, please just remember I happen to have the facts on my side when I talk about this conference. I'm not going to overthink the top of the SEC East. That's what I'm not going to do. It is Georgia's party, and until further notice, everyone else is just getting to hang out, not inside, but out on the front lawn. Now, Tennessee made some noise last year until they went to Athens. We were at that game. The only thing worse than going to a game that you expect to be good and it turns into a rout is getting rained on, because then you're kind of mad and you're kind of soggy as well. And I don't like being soggy. And especially don't like going to a game that turns into a blowout. And despite what they tell you, that absolutely was a blowout. But then Georgia comes into this year. I don't care about last year. I'm trying to predict this year. What style of offense will they afford themselves the ability to play? So they've got Mike Bobo elevated as their OC. I don't worry about that. That's a non-issue for me. He'll be fine. With the running back situation, there are 2 schools of thought around this program. So they've been banged up. They lost a guy for the season the other day that they thought was rounding into feature back form. And there's a thought amongst people who just kind of follow recruiting, but they don't really get into the weeds of depth chart and roster that, oh, Georgia will just pump out another guy. Well, it's not as easy as that. Now, they've got players there. I think they've even got a couple of walk-ons that they believe could perform admirably. But you'll win national championships with admirable play. So will they afford themselves the opportunity to play offense the way they want to? And if they can't, if they have to lean a little bit more on the pass, how does that wide receiver room perform? How does Carson Beck perform? I've got sky-high expectations for that kid. Like, if I were to pick against Georgia this year, it wouldn't be because I doubt Carson Beck, ironically enough. I know anyone else probably would say, I'm picking against Georgia because they got a new quarterback. That wouldn't be why I did it. It would be probably other facets of the team. But outside of Athens, you look at their schedule, that at Tennessee, 11-18 kind of catches one's eye. All about Joe Milton with the Vols. Again, the entire theme in the East is A, who can compete with Georgia? B, don't overthink the room. It's about Joe Milton. I can talk about Tennessee's defensive recruiting. I can talk about the 3 offensive line positions up for grabs. It's all about the quarterback. That's all about that. Now, there are other teams over here. I'm going to get to them in just a second. Over in the West, I got in a little, I don't know what you call it when you go back and forth with people on the internet, but I got in a type fight the other day with someone who was trying to degrade the good name of the SEC West. And their exact quote was, "Don't tell me playing A&M at Ole Miss and at Auburn is hard." Well, it is, actually. It is hard, immunity. It's really, really difficult because those are really good teams. The difference is when you play in a division that's pretty loaded, folks got to lose. For every one game that LSU wins, someone had to lose. Ditto, Bama wins, someone had to lose. So someone's going to be 7-5 here and be one of the 25 best teams in the country, but you won't believe that because you believe one of the big lies in our sport, which is you are what your record says you are. Question to you, friend. If I put Arkansas or Auburn or Ole Miss in the Big Ten West, what would you call them? Answer, contenders. That's what you'd call them. Same team, same coach, same colors, everything. They'd be contenders all of a sudden. So yeah, it is a tough stretch to play. Look, I could go Arkansas, I could go Mississippi State for that matter. I could go anyone in the West in that argument. Texas A&M, but look, Alabama has not missed the SEC championship game in back-to-back years since 2010 and 2011. And they went ahead and won the national title in 2011 anyway. So it is very rare when we see Bama out of the title picture back-to-back years. Well, they are not favored to win the SEC championship this year. They are a plus 155 to make the playoff. They are plus 600 to make the college football playoff championship game. You're going to see a radical shift offensively there. I have continued to get the same kind of intel out of Tuscaloosa, Alabama for the entirety of fall camp. I'm going to share more of it with you in just a second. It's encouraging, but it's also scary because it's a very, very fine line. It's a very, very thin needle that has to be threaded. I think that's the right usage of the word. But if it is threaded, it's going to be pretty violent over there in the SEC West. LSU has a lot of good on their team that they need to transition to great. Last year, LSU should have gotten all the praise they got, and they deserve it, and we gave it to them, and everyone else should have as well. So they also got blown out by Tennessee. They also lost to Texas A&M. Again, because the expectation was so low, I could bake that in, and it's still a really great year. We can't have that sort of thing this year. LSU's at the party now. LSU's not showing up as a stranger, and everyone's trying to figure out, who is this? No, LSU's there now. And so offensive line and defensive line, it's what they keep talking about down there. And I think defensively in their front seven, maybe the best in the conference. They've got depth. Mason Smith, in other words, being out for the FSU game. That's not the kind of thing where you look and say, what are we going to do now? Roll other guys in, lean on other guys. Oh, by the way, outscore them. Like those are the sorts of things LSU can do. You want to know who the sleeper is in the SEC? Pretty much everybody. But when we talk sleepers in the SEC, I'm not necessarily talking about a sleeper contender to win the conference. You know, if I circle Kentucky, which I am, Kentucky is one of the biggest sleepers in college football to me. I am not circling Kentucky and saying, you better watch out. Boy, if they get into Atlanta and face off against LSU or Alabama, those folks got their work cut out for them. It's not that. It's Kentucky could be better than whatever their preseason over-under win total is. Did you know, second McGrady stat special for the SEC, did you know 8 of the top 10 strength of schedules in the country are in the SEC? Per Bill Connolly of the S&P Plus, just so you don't think that's me throwing that out there. 6 of the hardest 6 schedules in the country are in the SEC. Now, I know what the comment section will say. Well, that's just because if you blindly believe in the strength of the SEC, then strength of schedule is going to be very incestuous because they all play each other, blah, blah, blah. Well, I believe in it because I think it happens to be true. So Kentucky's a sleeper. Offensive line, I think, has worked out. Devin Leary is a phenomenal pickup, the most underrated national pickup out of the portal that people are only just now starting to talk about. Good receiver talent there. Liam Cohen back as the offensive coordinator. Florida is the conundrum for me. We're going to see them in person 4 days from now out in Salt Lake City. We'll fly out there Wednesday for the Once Upon a Saturday tour, kicking off on a Thursday, ironically enough. Florida's going to go out there. They're going to play Utah. Graham Mertz is going to start at quarterback for them. I talked to Billy Napier at SEC Media Days, and one of the biggest things that I took away from what he said is I evaluated the quarterbacks all the same. Mertz was my guy, but Paul Chryst giving us as a staff the feedback that he gave us about how they misused that kid at Wisconsin, that was valuable for us. That told us maybe there's more there. And if you think about it, you think about Penix and Nix just on the West Coast. Producer Jesse made a good point today. He said, imagine 2 years ago telling people that Bo Nix and Michael Penix are going to be right there in the thick of the Heisman Trophy race 2 years later. Well, they are. They just had to go to other programs to realize their potential. What I didn't just do is say, look out for Graham Mertz in the Heisman race this year. What I did do is pump the brakes a little bit on just selling someone down the river because they didn't perform somewhere else, especially when that somewhere else was not a conducive passing environment, and the coaching staff's flat out admitting, yeah, we kind of screwed up with that guy. Mississippi State, I keep calling all these teams the biggest sleeper, but Mississippi State's also one where every starter is going to be an upperclassman. 18 plus of their starters, maybe 19 or 20 of them, will be seniors. They get LSU at home. They get Alabama at home. They've got a quarterback that people continue to doubt because they think he's a system guy. And I ask, how many quarterbacks aren't system quarterbacks? Although I know what you mean, your point is taken. I think that coaching staff understands what they have too. I don't think they're going to put him in a precarious situation this year, the one that Will Rogers can't handle. He's like 29 years old too, so he knows how to handle himself. But those are sleepers. Okay, South Carolina, I could mention. South Carolina just got a ridiculously tough schedule. I want to know what our conference championship matchup here is. And I don't think it's all that difficult when the dust settles. I'm taking Alabama out of the West. I'm taking Georgia out of the East, and I'm putting them in Atlanta. Hey, Colin, since that happened, I'm just going to state it over again because we'll probably clip it. Yeah, thank you, sir. I'm taking Alabama out of the West. I'm taking Georgia out of the East. I think Alabama's going to win the SEC championship. I think the Alabama team you see early on will not resemble that. Very interesting year coming up. I actually think Georgia may look halfway wobbly out of the gate. So these two teams, there's a half decent chance you watch them early in the year. You know they're loaded. They look like they can't get out of their own way. At least one of them is going to look like this, I can assure you. And I think you'll watch them, or casuals will watch them and say, oh, they've fallen off. Not realizing, well, it's Middle Tennessee State. You know, it's any of a number of teams Georgia plays early. Kind of like USC yesterday. When they round into form, they will be the cream of the crop in the SEC. The team Alabama becomes will be the best in the SEC. I don't think they'll look like the best team in the SEC to start the year. They've won 7 of the 8 SEC titles that Saban has won with a first-year starter at quarterback. It's not foreign territory for him. It just looks radically different than it has over the past few years. Here's the difference with them. They've known it's coming, and they've known they hadn't had an elite quarterback on that roster, and they know they still don't, and that hasn't snuck up on them. And that's why everything ideologically in that program shifted the moment that Kansas State game ended last year. You saw coaches hit the door, you saw players hit the door, and you saw an entire inversion in many cases, from strength and conditioning to nutrition to overall philosophy. They've known what they're going to have to do this year for quite a while, and they're equipped to do it. I am telling you guys one more time, and then we'll just get to watch it, and that's upcoming Saturday. You have not seen an offensive line in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, play like the one you'll see this year in a long time. And that is the key behind everything this prediction revolves around. Style is going to make you doubt them early. I think it'll ultimately make you believe in them late, and I think they'll win the SEC championship.